If you've been watching my videos, you already know. This video right now is basically J.K. Rowling telling you, hey, I just wrote Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I think it's going to be really huge, and it's available for free until January. If she told you that when you were in middle school, you'd be like, eh. But you know what? Now you'd be kicking yourself that you didn't go get a copy. So that's this moment. This is that moment right now. Go get this book. It's free. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. It's free, it's amazing, and it's not going to be free for much longer.
Started your addiction, it can help you manage it.
I've read, like I said, dozens of fantasy books, and I'm like, where are the drug dealers? I mean, maybe there are none in your town, but there are some in mine. Nothing against white people, but it is like, hey, why aren't we writing about the privilege and the danger of that privilege in fantasy books? Why do these things that actually happen, that actually exist, disappear in fantasy? People have real baggage, and that doesn't go away just because you all of a sudden have a magical power. How about a 150-page novella that will blow your mind so quickly and tell you so many things, meanwhile kind of telling you nothing? I wanted a book that felt more like somewhere where I was from. I wanted it to feel like these streets of Richmond. The kind of stories that I want to read and I want to tell typically don't get support from traditional publishing houses. Even the greats had to censor themselves to appease, quote unquote, the mass market. But I think there's just a misconception with Caucasian people in publishing. They think that that black people don't read books, maybe, or they think that we don't read fantasy books, or maybe they think that white people won't read black books. All of those things have been proven to not be true, and yet we are still the minority in traditional publishing. I can literally learn every single skill at every step. If not enough to do it myself, then enough to know what I want before I go out to pay somebody to do it for me. Like, for instance, I wasn't able to do my own cover art, but I did do all the research on what a cover should look like for my genre. Kind of a cross between fantasy and urban fiction. At the end of the day, it's a speculative fiction. The question is, what would happen in our world? What would happen in our world if anybody could get a magic power at any time and you have no idea who's going to be next? And it has been compared to Harry Potter, it's been compared to Lord of the Rings, it's been compared to Kindred and the 100,000 Kingdoms and Sula. And not to say that it is just like any of those stories, but it kind of embodies all of these types of major fantasy novels. And I don't know how, I still don't know how. Less than 20 people, I think, have read my book cover to cover. But one of those people is a major journalist who's worked for Washington Post and NBC, and he's already listed my book with those greats that I just mentioned, Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler, and N.K. Jemisin, and me on the same list, which is great because that means that somebody is seeing that this is something special very early in my career. I didn't even know that that article was out. I found that article in October. I've been talking about it ever since, but he wrote it in July. So, you know, didn't even tell me. He didn't contact me to say, hey, I made an article. I have no idea how this guy found me. By the grace of God. That's what I'm calling it, because I felt divinely guided to write this story, to finish it. And then a month after I put it out, somebody who's not at all a part of the audience that I had in mind when I did the edits, I was like, I'm speaking to this audience and he's way over here, the complete opposite. And I'm like, great. That means more than just black millennials, female or AFAB or female presenting will like this book. That's great. I'm super surprised by that, but I'm also really pleased because that means that this book is reaching more people than this little box that traditional publishing believes are the only people I can connect to. And I'm writing a real story. Like, obviously there are fantastical elements, that's what I want, but I want it to be real and as authentic as possible. But I've read dozens of fantasy books and I'm like, these are black people, but they don't necessarily live anything like anybody I've ever met. If you think about it, Octavia Butler wrote a lot of stories about people on the West Coast. I live on the East Coast. We have N.K. Jemisin, who did City We Became. That's about New York. I'm from the South. You see what I'm saying? So I'm Black. I'm on the Southeast. I'm in the Southeast. You know, so it's not that people aren't writing to me. They just don't have my same experiences, and I'm writing for everybody. Like, I've read, like I said, dozens of fantasy books, and I'm like, where are the drug dealers? I mean, maybe there are none in your town, but there are some in mine. Nothing against white people, but it is like, hey, why aren't we writing about the privilege and the danger of that privilege in fantasy books? Why do these things that actually happen, that actually exist, disappear in fantasy? How about a 150-page novella that will blow your mind so quickly and tell you so many things, meanwhile kind of telling you nothing? First chapter, you'd be like, okay, this is chill, something slight, but it also is telling you so much. You're like, okay, well then what is the rest of this story about? Because this is only the first chapter. And it's short. And then you get to the second chapter and boom, high fantasy for your mother, okay? Is it a high fantasy? I'm throwing you right in there in the middle of some juicy tea. So that's how you're gonna find out the information, because people have baggage. People have real baggage. And that doesn't go away just because you all of a sudden have a magical power. Sure, they can use it, but it's not gonna solve their problems. In fact, in a lot of ways, it complicates their life much further. And I cannot wait to give you this next book. The way that I'm gonna give you this next book, though, I want something from you. Bonus arc chapter to bridge you from this first story to the next one. I have been told that that chapter could be its own novel, and I'm aware that I give you that much information, but I have so much more that I want to give you. And before I do that, I want you to read my book. I want you to critique this arc chapter. It's an advanced reader copy. I want your opinion on it before it is the permanent chapter in this really epic fantasy. This next one is a high fantasy. I don't have to look up the definition to let you know this next one is a high fantasy. Did I not mention to you in this? No. Just read it, review it. Time is money, but money is not time. So let's get on it, because mama's throwing dimes. I don't know. I don't know.